My grandson shoved me down a steep slope, nearly 15 meters high, where the cold, deep stream below seemed ready to swallow me whole. My son and daughter-in-law stood on the bank with their arms crossed, laughing as if watching a 72-year-old man collapse was a form of entertainment. They thought I would die in the laughter of my own blood. But what they did not know, from that day on, I turned every one of those laughs into evidence, and in the end, their entire family crumbled right here in this very kitchen. Before I continue, please support me in exposing the truth by subscribing to the channel and telling me in the comments where you are listening from. Your support is the strength that allows me to reveal the whole truth. I taught history for more than 30 years. In my old classroom at the high school, I often began each lecture with the words, "History never repeats, but it often leaves scars." I never imagined that very line would one day come true in my own life. That afternoon, the late summer sunlight spilled golden across the Blue Ridge hillside. I stood at the wooden railing behind the house, where you could look down into the valley and hear the stream murmuring below. From there, the ground dropped into a slope almost 15 meters long, steep enough that a single misstep could send you plunging. Beneath it, the stream ran nearly 1.5 meters deep, icy water rushing over moss-covered rocks. For a healthy person, falling would already be dangerous. For me, a man fresh out of heart surgery, that fall could have been the end. I was still wearing the thin hospital jacket from the place where I had undergone heart surgery, not even 3 months earlier. The doctor warned me to avoid heavy impacts and sudden shocks. I promised I would be careful, but no warning could have prepared me for that moment. Behind me came muffled giggles. Tyler, my grandson, just 20 years old, a freshman, was holding his phone, grinning widely. "Grandpa, look, try this TikTok trend," he shouted, laughing as he motioned to the group of friends filming. Before I could ask, "What trend?" his hand slammed into my back. Just one shove. But for a man fresh from surgery, that shove was a sentence. I staggered, feet slipping from the step, my whole body pitching outward. In that instant, I saw the sky spin, heard the wind roar in my ears. The red clay slope opened before me like a sliding carpet. I slid down, skin burning, then crashed into the freezing stream. Water to my waist, the current slammed into my chest, stabbing like thousands of needles, piercing my freshly stitched heart. Did someone scream? Number. Only laughter. Tyler threw back his head, laughing uncontrollably, while Sabrina, my daughter-in-law, shouted, "Oh my God, got it on camera. This will go viral for sure." Michael, my son, did not laugh aloud, but his eyes empty. He watched me thrash as though he were watching a film that had nothing to do with him. I struggled up, feet finding rock, hands clutching roots at the bank. My heart spasmed painfully. Each breath is like jaws clamping shut. In that moment, I truly thought, perhaps this is how they want me to end. But the survival instinct of an old man does not die so easily. I clenched my teeth and hauled myself onto the bank. My body drenched, heart racing. I heard Tyler call down, "You're fine." "Don't be dramatic. It's just a prank." I looked up, water streaming down my face. I said nothing, just stared into their eyes, 3 blood relatives standing there, and I saw clearly, to them, I was nothing but a prop. An old man is to be made into a joke. That night, George, my neighbor, an old friend, and former town sheriff, knocked on the door. He drove me to the emergency room at Asheville Memorial. Dr. Samuel Reed, who had followed my health for years, shook his head at the long bruise spread across my chest. "Harold, lucky you didn't break a rib. But this shock is no small thing. I'll record it in your file. Don't lose this paper. You may need it later." I held the paper, staring at the cold words. "Patient pushed down slope. Fell into stream. Strong impact. Risk of recurrent heart complications." Those lines, to me, were a formal indictment written in medical language. Back at the wooden house, I stood before the bathroom mirror. Cold water dripped from my hair into the sink. The man in the mirror was no longer the gentle teacher who always opened his door to his children. He was an old man publicly humiliated, turned into a joke for social media. I laid my hand on the glass, whispering, "Harold, if you still have dignity, this is the last time they will drag you down." From that moment, I knew what happened today was only the opening act, and if I did not act, they would never stop. The Asheville night was cold. Insects in the forest beat their steady rhythm, repeating without pause. I sat in my worn leather chair, the smell of antiseptic still clinging to my clothes, my chest stabbed with pain, but not as much as what my ears were about to hear. Tyler burst through the door, barging into the living room as if the house were his, phone in hand, face beaming. "Grandpa, you're trending now. The clip has tens of thousands of views already. The comments are hilarious." He dropped into the chair across from me, muddy shoes thrown onto the wooden table my wife and I bought when we first married. Sabrina followed, lipstick still bright, poured herself a glass of wine, and sprawled across the sofa. "You should be grateful, Harold." "At least the world knows you're still alive, right?" She laughed, the brittle laugh of someone who thinks the whole world is her stage. Michael, my son, came in last. He did not laugh, but he did not object either. He just looked at me with weary eyes, as if my public humiliation were no more than a small inconvenience in his schedule. "It was just a joke," Tyler said, voice dripping with the arrogance of spoiled youth. "Everyone does these clips. If you want, I can show you the edit. There's funny background music, too." I did not answer right away. I stared at him, silent so long the air grew thick. At last I said only, "Once you picked a dandelion for me." You handed it to me, grinning, saying, "Flower for Grandpa." I still keep that photo in a wooden frame on the shelf. "Do you remember, Tyler?" He looked up, frowned, then sneered. "What are you even talking about?" "Stop living on the past. This is the TikTok age. You have to know how to joke if you want to exist." Those words cut like a knife straight through my memories. That dandelion, symbol of a child's innocence, now buried under mocking laughter. Sabrina raised her glass, sipped, then tilted her head toward Michael. "See? I told you. He's starting to live in illusions, remembering nonsense. We need to think about the future." Michael sighed, leaning back in his chair. "I know. But it's not the time to say it outright. Give it a few more months. When he's weaker, then it will be easier." I heard every word. None of them realized I was sitting right there, listening to it all. Or worse, they knew, and simply did not care. I set my hand on the armrest, nails digging into the fabric until it tore. Yet my voice remained calm. "You were talking about me as if I were already dead." Sabrina raised her eyebrows, feigning surprise. "Don't overreact. We only want what's best for you." "The best," I repeated, "is turning me into a joke online and planning the day to send me into a nursing home." The room froze for a few seconds. Michael avoided my eyes. Tyler laughed out loud, but his smile faded when he saw that I never looked away from him. I stood and walked slowly toward the stairs. Before going up to my room, I spoke one sentence, my tone low, but ringing clear. "History does not forgive those who mock it, and neither do I." I left behind a silent room, the echo of my warning hanging in the air. That night, I did not sleep. I opened the desk drawer, pulled out an old black-covered notebook, the one that once held my history lectures, now to be used for another purpose. I wrote the first line, day, month, year. Tyler Bennett pushed me down the slope. Sabrina laughed. Michael stayed silent. This will be the first piece of evidence. Every word, every stroke of the pen was like a carving into stone. I knew I had entered an undeclared war, a war not of bullets, but of papers, evidence, and truth. And this time, I would be the one to write the history of the Bennett family. The next day, autumn light filtered through the curtains, but it did not warm the wooden house. I sat at the dining table and opened the black notebook. The first page was still wet with ink from the night before. I kept writing, my hand trembling slightly, but the lines steady. as if I were still standing at the lectern. This morning, Tyler came down in a hoodie, headphones in, no greeting. Sabrina complained about the neighbors gossiping over the clip. Michael pretended to read the paper, but was actually avoiding my eyes. Not a word of apology. Every detail, however small, held value. I knew that. My whole life, I taught my students. A battle is never remembered by a single drumbeat, but by its records. Today I applied that lesson to myself. The house that once was a home now reeked of betrayal. On the living room table still sat Tyler's leftover boxed pizza from the night before. Cold, the greasy smell seeping through the air. I remembered when Margaret, my wife, was alive. The kitchen always smelled of apple pie. Now the stench of spoiled food was the constant smell. Sabrina walked in with a cup of coffee in hand, her freshly permed hair carrying the chemical scent. She did not look at me, only around the house, as if she were the mistress. "Harold," she said, her voice tinged with irritation, "you should know that yesterday's clip embarrassed the whole family." "Everyone at church is whispering already," I immediately noted in the notebook. 9:10 a.m. Sabrina admitted the clip embarrassed the family, showed no remorse. Blamed me. Michael came out of his office, tie loose, laptop in his arms. "I know, Sabrina, but don't say it so loudly. He can hear you, hear me, as if I were a burden, not a person." Tyler came down the stairs, phone raised. "Grandpa, the new comments are hilarious. Someone wrote, 'Old man acting better than Hollywood.' See? You're famous now." He laughed. Sabrina joined in, and Michael only frowned, silent. I wrote again. 9:30 a.m. Tyler bragged about mocking comments. Sabrina laughed along. Michael stayed silent. I rose, walked past them without a word. In the kitchen, I opened the cupboard and took out the old wooden box Margaret left me. Inside, besides letters, were tuition receipts I had paid for Michael through 4 years of college. The numbers are clear. $36,000. I held the paper and laid it beside the notebook page. 36,000 for his future, I muttered, and in return today he allows his wife and son to make me their joke. In my mind, the stench in the house came not only from spoiled pizza or spilled wine. It came from the rot of gratitude gone. Every dollar, every drop of sweat I spent raising them. Now only memories to be crossed out in the ledger. At nightfall, with the streetlight casting shadows on the wall, I sat again with the notebook. I wrote the closing line of that day. This house once smelled of apple pie, now only of spoiled food and contempt. It is not that I have grown old, but that they have rotted inside. If I do not record it, history will be twisted. But this time, I will be the one to write it. I shut the notebook and placed it on the table. My fingers tapped its hard cover. I saw clearly every page would be a brick, and when the wall was high enough, no one would be able to deny it. On Saturday morning, while I was sweeping the porch, Mrs. Olivia Carter, the neighbor, a widow who lived 1 street away, came near. In her hand was a cloth bag, with a warm loaf of bread peeking out. She called my name, her voice half concern, half warning. "Harold, did you hear?" The video the kids posted last night I stopped sweeping, nodded. She glanced around as if afraid someone might overhear, then lowered her voice. "They filmed you, the scene from before, pushing you down the slope." Tyler reenacted it, even added effects and cheerful music. My daughter showed me. It's viral now, hundreds of shares. But not everyone is laughing. I gripped the broom handle tight. She set the bread on the wooden chair on the porch, eyes meeting mine. "Do you want me to send the clip to the pastor, or to someone?" Sometimes bringing it to light helps. For a moment I thought of making it public, but then Kayla's face flashed in my mind, the neighbor's daughter, Tyler's classmate, who once looked at me with pity the day I fell. In a small town like Asheville, news needs no broadcast. It spreads like fire in the wind. I answered slowly, "No need. Light will find its own way." Mrs. Carter nodded. Don't forget, people still remember who raised them. That line warmed my heart, if only briefly. By noon, the town buzzed. From the little cafe to the repair shop, from the church to the grocery store, everywhere whispers stirred. That video, instead of shaming me, made people ask, what kind of grandson laughs after pushing a heart surgery patient into a stream? Inside the house, it was the opposite. Tyler came downstairs, phone glued to his hand, grinning arrogantly. The whole school's talking about me. They say I'm hilarious. Look, trending already. Michael looked at his son, his tone sharper than usual. Do you need to brag like that? HR at the bank just called me. They want to discuss the optics. Tyler shrugged. I didn't post it. My friends did. Grandpa lost his balance himself, not my fault. He's weak. I sat at the kitchen table, my voice hoarse but clear. Not weakness. I was pushed. The whole room went silent. Sabrina broke the stillness with a forced laugh. Come on, Harold. You're making too much of it. This is a family matter. Blowing it up will only disgrace us. I wrote in my notebook. In broad daylight, before my face. They denied the truth. Tyler claimed, not my fault. Sabrina tried to justify. Michael feared losing reputation at work. That afternoon, I walked through the community garden. On the wooden bench near the pharmacy, two silver-haired women, the street's most notorious gossips, were whispering. They glanced at me, then faltered. One smiled at me, patting the seat beside her. Mr. Bennett, sit down. We just want you to know. We weren't. Laughing. Some things should never be a joke. I nodded but did not sit. I carried her words home like carrying an unseen witness. The town had begun to choose sides. That evening I wrote in the diary, the TikTok video, it is evidence I need not expose myself. The town has seen. Hearts are divided. Their crime was that they recorded and published themselves. I closed the notebook, my hand resting on the hard cover. I realized I no longer had to shout to be heard. Their arrogance had turned social media into a witness, and in a small town, cruel laughter never lasts. It becomes whispers, then a sentence. Rain pattered over Asheville, drops drumming on the old tin roof like a soundtrack to the decay inside the house. I sat in the study, door ajar, notebook open. From there, with only a tilt of the ear, I could hear everything in the living room. Sabrina began, her voice sharp but lowered, like a broker cutting a deal. Michael, we can't let that clip ruin the family's image. People are talking already. The best way is to be prepared. If Harold gets just a little weaker, if the doctor says he's not competent, everything comes to us. Michael sighed, fingers tapping the table. Thud, thud, thud. I know, but he still has the papers, the house, Tyler's college fund, all under his name. It won't be easy, Tyler snapped, annoyed. What's not easy? That's my money. Grandpa's always bragging about saving for the next generation. The next generation is me. All it takes is a signature. Why is he making it so hard? I heard Sabrina chuckle coldly. He thinks scribbling in that notebook will change anything. Once there's a power of attorney, Harold has no voice at all. Let him write as much as he wants. People will just believe he's senile. I gripped the pen in my hand. The nib trembled, but I still managed to record every word. Open conspiracy. Sabrina urging Michael to prove incompetence. Tyler declares the fund is his. Michael is silent. No objection. Moments later, Michael spoke softly, as though afraid his conscience might hear. I only worry. If he knows, he'll strike back. He's not as weak as we think. Sabrina cut him off, cold. Harold lives in the past. We're building the future. Don't worry. Whoever controls the story wins. I shut the notebook quietly. In the dark, I smiled. They thought me senile, thought me old. But tonight, in the very house I paid for brick by brick, they unmasked themselves. That night, I walked down the hall, the yellow lamp throwing my shadow, long like a ghost. I paused in the living room, looking down at the rug where they had plotted. Mud stains from Tyler's shoes. The sour trace of wine lingered in the air. I saw it clearly. The house Margaret and I once filled with decency had become a stage for betrayal. I whispered, not for them to hear, only for myself to remember. You have just signed your own sentence, and I will be the one holding the gavel. The next morning, Asheville's skies cleared, rare and bright after the long night's rain. Sunlight pierced through oak branches, scattering gold across the yard. I sat on the steps, coffee cup in hand, notebook beside me. The rumble of an old truck echoed from down the street. A familiar green Chevy stopped at the gate. George Whitman, my friend, the town's former sheriff, climbed out. Past 70 now, tall and lean, shoulders stooped, but his gray eyes still sharp as when he wore the badge. "Harold!" George called, his voice gravelly but steady. "They're talking about you everywhere." I know you'll hate to hear this, but you need to prepare. I invited him onto the porch. George set his hat down, his gaze falling on the bruises across my chest. He asked bluntly, "Have you gone to the police?" That shoved down the slope. That was dangerous conduct, not just a prank. I shook my head. I don't want to turn my family into a criminal case. I taught my whole life, and I believe in second chances, but I drew a breath. "George, last night I heard them in the living room. Sabrina is urging Michael to have me declared incompetent. Tyler shouts that the fund is his. They see me as an obstacle. Nothing more." George was silent for a moment, eyes narrowing. "That means they don't just want to humiliate you. They want everything. The house, the money, even your decisions." I nodded. "I have the diary and I write down everything. But one notebook isn't enough to protect me. I fear one day I'll wake to a forged signature, and the town will believe I've lost my mind." George laid a heavy hand on my shoulder. "Listen, Harold, you can't fight with words alone. The law has to stand with you. I've seen too many families tear themselves apart, and the silent one always loses. You need a lawyer." That afternoon, George returned, this time carrying a business card. "Lawrence King," he introduced, "estate lawyer in Charlotte. Tough, clean, unafraid of enemies." The card was black print on white, plain, a single line beneath the name, Estate and Trust Law. I turned it in my hand, my fingertips trembling, not from fear, but from knowing the rules of the game had changed. That night, I opened the diary and wrote, "Day, George came. Asked if I reported to the police. I said no. I recounted the conspiracy they hatched in the living room. George said truth only stands when the law protects it. He gave me the card of a lawyer. From today, the war is not only inside the house. It will go to court, to documents, before the law. I am no longer alone." 2 days later, I drove to Charlotte. The office of Lawrence King was on the second floor of a red brick building, its sign modest. His assistant, Emily Cho, a young Korean-American woman, greeted me with a professional smile, though her eyes held caution. In the small conference room, Lawrence King shook my hand. He wore a charcoal gray suit, a blue tie, and his calm eyes inspired trust instantly. "Mr. Bennett," he said, his voice deep. "George gave me a summary. Now I need to hear it directly from you. Don't hold back. Even the most painful parts, I told him everything. From the shove down the slope, the laughter, to the evening when they plotted in the living room." Lawrence listened without interrupting, nodding occasionally. Emily sat nearby, typing rapidly, capturing every word. At last, Lawrence closed the file and looked at me. "You taught history your whole life, didn't you?" "I taught my students that history is evidence, and no one has the right to rewrite it." He smiled faintly. "Then now you'll teach your own family that lesson, but we won't shout it in their faces. We'll stamp it, notarize it, and sign it." That night, I sat in the dark house, frogs croaking outside after the rain. I opened my notebook and wrote the final line of the day. I now have allies, a former sheriff, a lawyer, a young assistant, a doctor, and a small town where cruel laughter has turned into murmurs, of disapproval. Enough. I will turn them into evidence. I shut the notebook, my hand no longer trembling. On Monday afternoon, I returned to the law office in Charlotte. Lawrence King had prepared a thick file, neatly clipped. Emily Cho sat beside him, her fingers flying over the keyboard, the screen showing each item. Education Fund, Charlotte Apartment, Hillside House, Medical Authority, Financial Authority. Mr. Bennett, Lawrence began, his voice steady but firm. We're not just building a wall. We're constructing a fortress. Every asset, every decision, every document, they must all be bound in law. I nodded. Go on. I'm listening. He laid out each point. 1. Tyler's Education Fund. We will convert it entirely into a public scholarship managed by an independent foundation. Your name will be on it, and every transaction will go through my office. Tyler can scream, Sabrina can protest, but legally not a cent will bear their names. 2. The Charlotte Apartment, already transferred into a trust. Rental income will feed the scholarship annually. Untouchable. 3. The Hillside House. You keep full use until your death. Afterward, it transfers into a community land trust for veterans and working families. No, Bennett can never claim, this is my castle. 4. Medical and Financial Authority. In case you lose capacity, decisions fall to George Whitman and my office. No one can sign nursing home papers for you. No one can call the bank in your name. I read each line, and my eyes began to clear. Each clause was a brick, a fortress of ink and seals. Emily looked up, her voice sharp. Mr. Bennett, every inquiry on your accounts will be logged. If Sabrina or Michael attempts to contact the bank, the system alerts us instantly. We'll know I drew a deep breath. So every move they make leaves a trace? Exactly, Lawrence replied. You taught history. Now the history of your own family will be preserved on paper, undeniable. Back in Asheville, I walked into the house, strangely calm. Sabrina was on the phone in the kitchen, her voice low but sharp. Yes, if we prove he's senile, the assets can transfer. I'll handle the narrative. Michael just needs to sign. Michael stood nearby, silent. Tyler lounged in the living room, eyes glued to his phone, laughing at mocking comments. The old man fell better than Hollywood actors. I didn't intervene. I went straight to the study, opened my diary, and wrote, Today the fortress is built. The law is on my side. They can laugh, they can scheme, they can dream of castles. But this castle already has stone walls, and they are throwing stones with their bare hands. That night, George dropped by. He sat in the armchair and poured us hot tea. Harold, you've entered the hardest stage. They don't yet know what you've done, but when they do, they'll go mad. Be ready, I nodded. I've been ready my whole life. Only this time the weapon is not chalk or textbooks. It's documents, laws, and evidence. George chuckled softly, nodding. And you have me, Harold. Don't forget. Late at night, when the house was asleep, I stepped onto the porch. Moonlight washed over the red clay slope where I had once been pushed. The stream murmured below, a reminder. I whispered, You thought one shove could end me. But that shove built this fortress Sunday. The hillside house buzzed unusually. Sabrina is in a teal dress, hair curled, the scent of expensive perfume filling the living room. She stood at the center, directing as if producing her own show. We'll host a barbecue, invite neighbors, even the pastor. Show them the Bennett family is still a model. Harold just stumbled, nothing serious. It was all a joke. I sat in the armchair, watching her gesture like a cheap TV producer. Michael nodded wearily, going along out of fatigue more than conviction. Tyler smirked. Good idea, Mom. The more the merrier. I'll invite my friends. Show everyone Grandpa's fine. Nothing serious. Sabrina turned to me, her smile fake. Mr. Harold, you'll join us, right? Just 1 hour. Sit there. Smile. Reassure the neighbors. I stared into her eyes, my voice low but firm. This is my house. If there's a party, I'll sit. but don't mistake me for a prop in your cheap PR show." Her smile froze, then quickly returned, brittle. "Who would have thought an old teacher could be so witty?" I didn't reply, but that night in my diary I wrote, "Sabrina believes one BBQ can erase the truth. She doesn't understand that the town has seen the video. A toast cannot erase cruel laughter. A piece of meat cannot mask betrayal." On the day of the party, the backyard became a stage. Tables lined neatly, smoke from the grill thick in the air, BBQ sauce masking the rot of family. Neighbors arrived with salads and cakes, their faces curious. Sabrina floated among them, smiling, clinging to Michael's arm as if they were the perfect couple. Tyler leaned against the railing, grinning at his friends, while I sat in a corner, coffee cup in hand, silent. Just as Sabrina raised her wine glass, she spoke. "Thank you all for coming. We only wanted to show that Harold is perfectly healthy. The video online was just a misunderstanding, a prank that was edited. Our family loves each other and always stands together." Polite applause followed. But then Kayla, the neighbor girl, Tyler's classmate, stepped forward with her mother. She looked at me, then squarely at Sabrina, her voice firm. "It wasn't a prank." I was there. Tyler pushed Mr. Bennett. He fell into the stream. Everyone laughed. I didn't laugh. The crowd fell silent. Sabrina's smile froze, but she forced herself. "Sweetheart, you must be mistaken." "The video you saw," Kayla cut her off. "No, I'm not mistaken. I was there, and he didn't deserve to be made into a joke." The whole crowd shifted. Some cleared their throats. Some stared down at their plates. The neighbors knew. The play had collapsed. Sabrina lowered her glass, lips trembling as she tried to keep smiling. I sipped my coffee and said loud enough for the yard, "You can stage a BBQ, but you can't stage the truth." Heavy silence spread. That night I wrote in my journal, "The barbecue, meant as a cover, became a spotlight, exposing the fraud." Sabrina didn't realize she had made herself the clown before the entire town. After the BBQ, Asheville no longer talked about the weather or gas prices. The only subject was the TikTok video and Sabrina's failed correction. At Main Street Cafe, I ordered an Americano, and the room stiffened. A gray-haired carpenter whispered to his friend, "That boy shoved his grandfather into the stream," and laughed. Disgraceful, a young mother nodded. "I won't let my kids near Tyler again." The Bennetts don't know how to raise children. I sat by the window, pretending to read, ears catching every word. Whispers spread faster than smoke. At the barber shop, Joe, the barber, always loud, said while shaving a customer, "A teacher who spent his life educating students, and at the end, his own family turned him into a joke. Lord help us. I've never seen such shame." The shop went quiet. Then someone added, "Right." Sabrina thought BBQ would erase the crime. Turns out she smeared her own face with ash. Word reached the church. Pastor Matthew called after Sunday service. "Mr. Bennett, I just want you to know, many in the congregation feel for you. They're praying for you, and they're beginning to see your family differently." I thanked him, my voice catching. Not because I needed prayers, but because I understood. Whispers had become public judgment. A small town never forgets. That night, when Tyler came home late, frowning, I heard him mutter on the phone, "They're avoiding me. Lost 10 friends already. Blocked." Sabrina slammed her hand on the table. "All because of a stubborn old man? This family is a joke." Michael said nothing, but his eyes dropped. For the first time, I saw in him something he tried to hide. Shame. I wrote in my journal, "Local paper and a teacher have become official records. Not my allies, but truth's allies. Whispers have become a public verdict. And that verdict weighs heavier than any court." I closed the book, my hand trembling. Not from weakness, but from a strange feeling. The humiliation they sowed for me was now devouring them, piece by piece, through the mouths of neighbors. On Tuesday morning, 3 solid knocks at the door. I opened it to 2 Asheville police officers, a young man and a gray-haired woman. The woman smiled politely, but her eyes were sharp. "Mr. Bennett, We received an anonymous call to Adult Protective Services. The caller claimed you may be neglected or not competent to care for yourself. We need to conduct a welfare check. I stepped aside, calm. Please, come in. I know the procedure, and I'm ready. In the kitchen, the wooden table gleamed, lined neatly with pill bottles, a daily schedule, and a letter signed by Doctor. Read, Mr. Harold Bennett is competent, fully aware of his medical and financial decisions. I handed it over, along with Lawrence King's business card. The young officer nodded. Clear documentation. Exactly what we want to see. The woman scanned the house. No overdue bills, no hoarded trash, no neglect. Instead, the place was clean, the kitchen fragrant with fresh coffee. She nodded. Mr. Bennett, you take good care of yourself. If anyone tries to fabricate otherwise, call me. Here's my card. I took it, smiled. Thank you. People can fabricate stories, but I have evidence, and I welcome the light. When they left, I stood in the doorway, watching them go. Turning back, I saw Michael lurking in the hall, face pale. Dad, we didn't call, he stammered. I looked straight, but someone did, and only someone inside knew how to use the words elder neglect. He swallowed hard, silent. Sabrina came down the stairs, feigning calm, hand gripping the railing tight. It was just a welfare check. Nothing major, I scoffed. Yes, nothing major. Just enough to expose the cowardice of someone hiding behind a phone call. No one answered. Tyler looked up from the living room, his face blanching at the sight of the officer's card on the table. I opened my journal and wrote, Day. Police knocked. Anonymous call. Medical and legal proof shielded me. They left assured that I am competent. The family is pale with fear. The blow they struck rebounded and hit them square. I shut the notebook, breathing deep. The morning knock wasn't a weakness. It was a warning. I had begun to win. 3 days after the welfare check, I sat in my study. Late autumn sunlight spreading gold across the hardbound notebook. On the desk lay in neat order, Doctor. Reed's letter, Lawrence King's business card, the police officer's card, and the keys to the safe. Each was a brick, building an impenetrable legal shield. Sabrina entered, holding the local paper. Page 2, headline, bold. Offensive TikTok clip causes storm. Community outraged at irresponsible behavior. No names, but the town knew. Her face flushed as she flung the paper on the desk. Are you satisfied now? This family is a joke. All because you wouldn't stay silent. I lifted the paper, glanced, then set it down, my voice calm. Not because of me. Because you chose to turn tragedy into comedy. The audience only did what they must. Laugh at you. Michael followed, laptop in hand. He muttered, HR demanded I file a formal statement. They want to know why the video links to my family. They call it a matter of organizational reputation. He sat, rubbed his head, then looked at me. Dad, what should I do? I met his eyes, answered firmly, Do what you should have done the day Tyler laughed on the bank. Write the truth. Michael dropped his gaze. Truth was the hardest meal for a man used to bowing to his wife and son. Meanwhile, Tyler stormed in, throwing his phone on the table. Grandpa, you ruined everything. Friends are avoiding me, and the school is calling me in. Why won't you sign the education fund over? Don't you see I'm losing everything? I pushed Doctor. Reed's letter toward him. This is why. Because I'm still competent. Because I have the right to say no. And because that fund wasn't meant to feed your arrogance. Tyler shouted, You'll regret this. I swear, I replied evenly. Regret is a disease, and I am immune. He stormed out, the door slamming like a cheap drumbeat. I wrote, The paper shield is built. Press, doctor, lawyer, police, all lined like iron bars. They tried to break me, but now they are breaking, bone by bone, under the town's eyes. I looked up to see Sabrina's gaze, anger mixed with panic. She was beginning to understand. Every play she directed, I turned into evidence. And for the first time, I saw in her eyes fear. Monday, the air was cold and dry. carrying the smell of late-season rot. I drove to Charlotte and stopped at the familiar red brick building. In the small conference room, Lawrence King was already seated, neat in a gray suit, with a file thicker than the last time in front of him. Emily Cho set a bowl of peppermint candies in the center of the table, water already poured into glass tumblers. "Mr. Bennett," Lawrence began, "today is when we end the ambiguity. I'm going to read straight into the official record for court and the bank." I nodded, my voice rough. "Do it. I want them to hear it without any chance to cut in." Lawrence opened the file, his voice even but sharp as a blade. First, Tyler Bennett's Education Fund, converted into the Margaret Bennett Scholarship for first-generation college students. All prior access revoked, all unauthorized requests logged. Second, the Charlotte apartment, ownership transferred into a trust. No member of the Bennett family can make a claim. Third, the Hillside House remains under the full authority of Harold Bennett, but upon his death will transfer into a community land trust for veterans and working families. Fourth, medical and financial powers. In the event Mr. Harold loses capacity, authority belongs to George Whitman, then to our office. No one can place him in a nursing home without his signature. No one can touch his bank in his name. I sat there, eyes following each line, my heartbeat steady, not from fear, but from feeling each shackle turn into armor. Emily looked up, her eyes bright. "With this file, if Sabrina or Michael try a forged signature, if Tyler tries to get through the bank, the system will alert our office. Once they move, we have evidence Lawrence closed the file and slid it toward me. This is the lock, Harold. No way back. Are you ready?" I tightened my grip on the pen, the blue ink pressing into the page like a final seal. "I've been ready since the day they pushed me down the slope," I said. While I signed, the echo of laughter by the stream, Sabrina urging Michael to stage senility, Tyler shouting for money, all of it swelled like a wave, and I set my faith right on the pen's tip. When the file was closed, Emily smiled at me. "The fortress is complete." I stood, my chest light, as if setting down a burden carried for 40 years. Lawrence offered his hand. "From now on they can shout and threaten, but they'll be shouting at a wall made of law." I shook his hand and said softly, "And this time, the wall remembers." That afternoon, when I reached the Hillside House, the air inside was thick like a storm about to break. Michael sat at the kitchen table, laptop open but the screen blank, fingers trembling too much to type a word. Sabrina stood by the counter, a wine glass in her hand she didn't drink from, only turned to hide her agitation. Tyler slammed the door and stormed in, clutching a packet from the university's financial office. "They rejected it. The scholarship no longer has my name. They said it's now a public fund. What did you do, Grandpa?" I set the keys on the table, pulled out a chair, and met his eyes squarely. "I didn't do anything." I corrected what was wrong. "That fund was never yours. It belongs to the kids who reach down to pull others up instead of standing on the bank and laughing." Tyler flushed, his voice cracking. "You ruined my life." I laughed once, dry. "No, Tyler. You ruined your own life by treating cruelty as a joke?" Sabrina hurled the wineglass into the sink, the shatter ringing. "You think you're clever? You've turned this family into beggars. People out there are laughing in our faces. You just signed away everything," I said calmly. "I didn't give anything up. I took it out of the hands of the unworthy, and the town isn't laughing at me. They're laughing at you." Michael gripped his head with both hands, groaning, "Dad, why did you do this?" "I'm losing my job, Sabrina her reputation, Tyler his future. What more do you want?" I looked straight at him, my voice slow but cutting. "You're losing your job because you hid the truth. Sabrina loses her reputation because she lied. Tyler loses his future because of arrogance. As for me, I'm only losing a family that rotted long ago." No one said another word. Only the clock ticked on the wall, sounding like a verdict. I opened my journal and wrote, "Today the kitchen, once filled with Margaret's baking, became a courtroom. 3 defendants stood there, a coward, a pretender, an arrogant boy. They sentenced themselves with their downcast eyes. I closed the book and looked up. In that moment, I saw it clearly. The legal fortress stood firm, and this kitchen collapsed. Friday morning, I woke early, brewed a strong pot of coffee, and looked out the window. The hillside house was quiet, only wind through the leaves. I set a sheet of paper on the kitchen table, the title in bold, "Notice to vacate, 14 days." At the bottom was my signature, the stroke hard, unshaking. When Sabrina saw it, her face went pale. "You can't do this. This is our home." I lifted my eyes from the paper, my voice even and cold. "No, this is my home, and I've given you 14 days. After that, the locks change." Michael stammered, "Dad, do you really want to throw us into the street?" I looked at him like delivering a final lecture. "You're not being thrown into the street, Michael. You're being returned to where you belong, where no one carries your mistakes for you." Tyler shouted, "You'll regret this. I'll come back, and by then you'll have nothing." I laughed, a hoarse sound even to my own ears. "Do you think threats are a kind of inheritance, Tyler?" "Number. You'll come back only to find a locked door." Sabrina slammed her palm on the table. "You have no right." I went to the safe, took out the file, and set it in the middle of the table. Sealed papers, red notary stamps glaring. "Here is the right," I said simply, "and the law is on my side." No one answered. The air thickened, the only sound the clock's steady tick. I opened the journal and wrote, "Day." I handed them the legal notice. No more fog, no more delusion. They have 14 days to clear out. After that, this house will be quiet, like it deserves. In the afternoon, George drove up in the old Chevy to help load the sealed boxes. He looked at me and said softly, "Harold, you're doing the right thing. It hurts, but it's right." I nodded, firm. Right is all I have left to give Margaret, even if she isn't here. On the slope, I paused to look down at the stream where I had been pushed. The water still ran deep and cold, but I no longer felt swallowed. I saw a testament. From there, I stood up, and now I was stepping out of that house, like stepping out of my family's shadow. On the last morning in the hillside house, I packed a small suitcase, taking only what truly belonged to me: the thick journal, Margaret's old flannel, a photo of me holding Michael as a child, and the blue glass sphere she once bought at a fair. I set the house keys on the table beside the legal notice Sabrina despised, and slipped a copy into my coat pocket, to remind myself this was not an emotional decision, but a lawful order. George arrived in the old Chevy, the truck bed carrying a few boxes of books and clothes. On the porch steps, Michael stood silent, stubbled, eyes red but saying nothing. Sabrina folded her arms, hatred in her gaze but not daring to come closer. Tyler stood off to the side, face stony, as if trying to swallow the shame closing in. I looked at them one last time and said firmly, 14 days, then the locks change. This is no longer your home." No one replied. I turned, stepped down the stairs, feeling light as if slipping off a suit of rusty armor. On the road to Silver Pines, I sat in the passenger seat, wind coming through the window with the scent of pine. George drove, asking little, only glancing over at times and nodding as if to say, "You're free." Silver Pines appeared beyond the ridge, a small community of white-painted houses, low wooden fences, and blooming gardens. The manager handed me the key to my new place. Brisk. "Welcome home." I stepped into a bright room, fresh painted walls, windows facing the garden. I set Margaret's flannel on the chair, the glass sphere on the table, the photo on the sill. The room suddenly had a soul. That night, I wrote the last line in the journal. I gave up a rotten family to keep myself. I built a fortress of paperwork, and now I live in a new home built of truth. I was pushed into a stream and heard cruel laughter, but from that I stood up. This is not an ending. This is a beginning. I closed the book and set the pen on a blank page. Outside, chrysanthemums opened in silence. Across town, Sabrina would surely be screaming, Michael blaming himself, Tyler plotting revenge. But now they were only distant echoes, and I, for the first time in years, could hear my own breathing, steady, calm, needing no one's permission. My family thought the laughter on the bank would drown me, but that very laughter became the sentence that forced them to bow their heads. I did not take revenge with knives or fists. I took revenge with paperwork, with the law, and with truth that cannot be denied. They lost everything, and I walked out of that house with my honor intact. And if there is one thing I learned in the end, it is this. Whoever scorns the truth will be buried by the truth itself. Thank you for staying with me until the end of this story. If you feel this journey was worth it, please like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. Which story would you like me to tell next? Let me know. And if you haven't heard the others, click the playlist on the screen. Truth and justice never run out of endings.